Psychologists will tell you if you're trying to make changes into your future, the way that you make changes isn't many times the big transformative ways we would first think of, but actually through small habits that are done every day. They say what you do every day is more important than what you do big, but once in a while. And so when psychologists will tell you about changing your future or changing your life, they'll first actually go to your habits, which are reoccurring patterns that you do every single day. That's what actually produces. Patterns produce your life. And so they'll say things like, if you want to change, what you first and foremost have to do is you have to look at what time you wake up in the morning. And you have to set a specific time every single day. Or they'll say you need to look at your diet or your exercise. You need to actually have more than a to-do list. You need to have a calendar. They'll begin to help you with these very practical patterns that are really habits that will help you change your life. I heard of one psychologist that was speaking with a young woman. She said, I'm so tired, I'm not motivated, I'm always low-key, low energy. All I want to do every single day after work is go home and watch Netflix every single day till I go to bed. And after going through a bunch of tests and everything, the psychologist said, what do you eat every day? And when she brought out what her diet was and they diagrammed it out, he realized that her amount of intake was practically starving herself. He said, no wonder you have no energy, motivation, or drive. What you are fulfilling yourself is not enough to produce any fruitfulness in your life. You have to change your diet. And many times we even think we need a spiritual awakening, we need something massive to change, and that is true, but after that, you need to begin to just work on the very practical things that God has given you the ability to shift and change and correct in your life in order to produce your future life. And all of that's true, and all of that's important, and I hope to speak even more on that on another time, but James, who has been a pastor, which is a practical psychologist, for a long time, 30 years of seeing people's mistakes and frustrations and fruitlessness, he backs this, he goes to the sole motivation of your entire life. He goes even deeper than the psychologist. He goes further than the psychologist. He says before you work on your calendar and your diet and before you work on your environment and who you're around, first and foremost, you must look at your speech, at your tongue. James says your tongue, this is what he proposes, is that your tongue is the foremost catalyst in your entire life. It is the foremost habit. It is the catalyst motivation for your entire life. If you get this wrong, it does not matter what your diet is, what your exercise is, what your job title is, what time you wake up in the morning, or how successful you are even perceived in the world. If you do not get your tongue right, eventually your life will collapse in on itself. If you don't get your speech right, eventually your environment will become toxic. First and foremost, you must, James says, tame or control your tongue. And James he knows about the power of speech. His book is actually a mixture of Jesus' speech on the Sermon on the Mount in the book of Proverbs. And the book of Proverbs has a lot to say on the tongue. And so here James is melding these two things together. Proverbs is the book of wisdom, and he was next to brother of Jesus, who is the wisest person to ever live. Even if you don't believe Jesus is God, there's no mistake that he's the greatest leader who's ever lived, who's produced the greatest movement that the world has ever seen. He's an incredible leader, and James is looking at the leadership in Proverbs and the leadership of his brother, and he pulls it together for us and says, if you want to lead, if you want to teach, if you want to have a good future, you got to get this thing right. He begins to try and convince us about the power of our words. Even if you go to the book of Genesis, you see that the foremost creative force in the world is the spoken word. The spoken word literally makes the universe. That's why you've heard that phrase, your words create worlds. Because you're made in the image and likeness of God, and when God wanted to make a world, he spoke it into existence. Your words are a creative force that leave you and go into the atmosphere, and they begin to affect change. If you don't think that's true, walk into a room where people were just arguing and tell me that there's not an atmosphere that was created in that room. You don't know what it is, you don't know how it got there, but I got to get out of this room. Or have you ever walked up to someone and they've been talking about you? You didn't hear that they've been talking about you, but based on the atmosphere around them, you've just been talking about me. Ever walk up into that situation? And when you say, what are you talking about? Then they obviously lie. Oh, we're talking about NASA. We're just thinking about solar system. We see in Genesis that the Word is the foremost creative force. And you know, the Bible says in Revelation, when Jesus returns, he's going to return with an army of angels behind him, but the Bible says that he will have a sword that comes from the mouth of God and destroys his enemies. It's a picture about the powerful force of the Word. It's able to create and it's able to destroy the enemies of God. When Jesus speaks, the Bible says the Word is like a two-edged sword. It cuts away the flesh and leaves the spirit. It cuts away evil and leaves right. It cuts away ungodliness and leaves godliness. That your words are piercing and powerful because his word is piercing and powerful. This is why you need to know the word so that you will be able to cut away the lie from the truth. And James he's speaking to us about this, saying you need to know how powerful your words are. In the book of Proverbs, the Bible says that the power of life and death itself are found in the tongue. You know, it actually even says that your words, the words of a righteous man, will end up rescuing him. In other words, if you find yourself in an ambush, in a trap, in a cycle, in a place where you can't get out of, it's saying use your words to begin to speak life over yourself, freedom over yourself, liberty over yourself, because it will rescue you out of a broken place. Your words can lead you somewhere. It'll rescue you. You know, one ancient writer created this visual saying, when God created the tongue, it was so powerful that he put around it 2 walls and put it in its own cage and had doors seal over it, because you have to think very clearly when you're going to decide to use it. That you open the doors, you unlock it from its cage, because be careful, this thing is like a wild animal. You got to set a guard on it. The psalmist says, I've put a guard on my tongue, and I've set a watchman on my lips. Be careful what you allow yourself to say, because there's no such thing as speaking flippantly. You might do it, but there's no such thing as the consequence being no big deal. You might speak like it's no big deal, but the reality is it is a big deal. Everything you say is powerful, so beware even how you say it. I want to just do a quick exercise with you today. I want to introduce you today to the leader of your life. Will you do something with me real quick? Just stick your tongue out real quick. Just go ahead. None of you are doing it. Just go ahead. Do it in church. You can do it. I know your mom said it's bad manners, but right now, everyone's just in disobedience. I'm not doing it. Turn to your neighbor. Just stick your tongue out. No, I'm kidding. Don't do it. Don't do it. Your tongue is the foremost leader in your life. It will begin to guide you to a certain place. It will begin to direct you in a certain way. It will literally call down blessings or cursing upon you and everyone around you. It is a very powerful thing. And here is James, the pastor. And after 30 years of pastoring, after 30 years around being around Jesus and the Pharisees, by the way, because he saw how Jesus spoke and he sees how they speak. After being around that, he begins to figure out that there is a correlation here between how you speak and how you live. He's figured out that eventually how you speak will create how you live. He's found this correlation. And here's what I would propose to you today. And I really believe this is what James is proposing, that we must get control of your tongue, or your life eventually will get out of control. You must get control of your tongue, or your life will eventually get out of control. The positive of that is if you can control your tongue, eventually your life can come into alignment.